This comes from Carol Ann. My husband listens to your podcast obsessively, and he suggested that I email y'all to see if you can help with our current issue. We are unable to find contractors in our area who know how to deal with old houses. So every time we try to begin a project, we end up doing a bunch of research ourselves, then become so overwhelmed that we just give up. We're currently trying to figure out how to insulate our house without causing moisture issues. We live just north of Memphis in a one-story house with a tight crawl space. The original part of the house is over 130 years old, and it's been added onto several times. During the winter, the house is only warm while the heat is actually blowing and gets cold as soon as the heat stops blowing, and vice versa in the summer. Shortly after moving in, we had loose insulation blown into the attic. I think they blew it on top of the old bats. There's no insulation under the house. The exterior of the house has vinyl siding, and we're pretty sure it has a thin layer of rigid foam under that, with the old wood siding under the insulation. We didn't think there was any insulation on the walls, which was confirmed when we demoed a bathroom that has an exterior wall. We believe some of the house is balloon framed. We can see the open wall cavities from the attic, and on one interior wall that was previously an exterior wall before the house was added onto, the bottom of the door frame was cut to accommodate flooring. There's currently no flooring within the width of the door frame, so it's just plywood there, and there's a gap between the door frame and plywood. We tried to squish some backer rod into the gap, and the backer rod seemingly falls into a bottomless pit. We have a lot of old exterior walls that are now interior walls. To give you an example of how hard time finding people who know how to work on houses, every time we've told someone that you can see into the wall cavities from the attic, they tell us that's not possible. Is that possible that contractors in Memphis don't know about balloon framing? What you're nodding, Mike?
Well, it depends on who they're asking and what experience they have. Eventually, if you keep asking enough, you'll bump into some old timers that say, oh, yeah, those were built between this period of time and that period of time. And they're very common and they'll know just what to do. So I think one of the answers there for her is finding those old timers who are familiar with this type of building.
She goes on to say, in the bathroom that's being renovated, the contractor sealed large gaps with spray foam and put fiberglass bats against the old exterior siding. The interior of the siding is unpainted. He also used fiberglass bats on all the interior walls in the bathroom. So we're trying to figure out if we need to do anything about the insulation in this bathroom. The bathroom project has dragged on for 4 years. So the drywall is only partially up, and we'd be willing to pull it down to fix the insulation if needed. We're also looking for suggestions for the rest of the house where the walls are still intact, and we're not looking to demo these anytime soon or maybe ever, and we want to make sure we don't cause moisture issues. One more thing, when we had insulation blown into the attic, they also blew it into one interior wall cavity, which might be an old exterior wall. Do we need to do anything about that? If you have any suggestions on how to find contractors that know about old houses, we're all ears. Sorry, this question is so long, but I wanted to make sure you had all the relevant information. Okay, so let's back up here a little bit. Carol Ann is asking first, how do I find a contractor that's familiar with old houses? And then I think secondly, we should talk about some of the fundamental problems with Carol Ann's house and the bigger picture, and give her maybe a brief roadmap on what to tackle first. So Mike, you suggested just keep talking to contractors to find the right one. Is there any other leads that Carol Ann might follow up on to find the right person?
Well, the contractor she's really looking for in one regard is somebody to do the insulation work. So what I would do is talk to companies that do dense packed cellulose, because they're the ones that generally do this type of work, and then look for community action program weatherization specialists. So there are federal and state funds that go to these community action programs to help underserved communities fund improving the energy efficiency of their homes. And the contractor network, which may not be the contractor network that are advertising to do work on newer homes or building newer homes to do the insulation in those homes. They usually work just on these old homes. So they're going to be, number one, familiar with the moisture issues and what needs to be done to work in your region around the Memphis area. Number two, they'll know how to install the insulation properly. And number three, they'll probably be doing dense packed cellulose, which is going to be a preferred material when you're working on these old houses, because it's going to reduce the air movement. It'll do some air sealing in the process of dense packing. Not that it's completely impervious to air movement, but when they dense pack in walls particularly, it's going to reduce any airflow through there, and probably a lot of your energy loss is due to the air moving through, as well as the lack of insulation in general.
Your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what Mike said. I did, have some conversation with Carol about this project because I found it interesting, and we exchanged a few emails, and the first thing I suggested was, like you, you, no need to be too concerned about moisture, and also we can't answer your moisture questions until you actually tell us what someone wants to do, so we know what materials are being used. And but like if you followed a simple approach in an old house like this to prioritizing some air sealing and insulating work with materials that were essentially or on the vapor open side, you don't have to work, no concern about moisture issues. In other words, if you get in your attic with a lot of caulk and canned spray foam, and then, as Mike said, if you dense pack walls with blown cellulose, or add more, well, she said there's plenty of insulation in her attic, but to keep the example going, add a material like blown cellulose or fiberglass in an attic. Like, this is all like you're tightening up the house in terms of air leaks, but you're still allowing it to dry. You haven't prevented any drying potential. So no real big concerns that with anything that she has brought up when it comes to moisture issues, but it is a matter here of like prioritizing the work. I expressed it. It's really a bummer when you find out that someone blew a whole bunch of cellulose into an attic and probably didn't lift up the original fiberglass bats first to do some air sealing, because it's such a missed opportunity, and it got a lot harder to do it. But prioritizing like where to do that work, probably blocking off the balloon framed walls and blowing in cellulose is a good place to start here. They're probably going to need to address the crawl space at some point for comfort and efficiency. So yeah, it's a matter of just getting a plan together. It's not fun, it's not easy, but it's not super like complex work either.
One thing that Carol Ann said in her email that I think is key to understanding the problem here is the house is only warm while the heat is actually blowing, and gets cold as soon as the heat stops blowing, and vice versa in the summer. This house needs an air barrier. That is a definite sign of a house that is not keeping its conditioned air inside. It is just leaking out as fast as you're making it. So I would say get an energy auditor and a blower door test as a good starting point to figure out where these big holes are. And if you can see into the basement through the exterior walls because it's balloon framed, that is a huge hit right away. Those all need to be sealed up.
Yeah.
And one avenue too to find a contractor, insulation contractor wise, as well as an energy auditor, is to check with the Building Performance Institute, bpi.org. And you can usually search for their certified contractors in your area. And that might be a way to broaden the reach that you have for who you're contacting.
One thing I didn't know for sure, I have a hunch, but I didn't know for sure with a project like this, if these walls are balloon framed and if they are open in the attic, and seal off the bottom of those cavities, can you dense pack from the attic? You can. Or do you still need, to dense pack, do you need to like be going through the walls so that you can be closer to where you're packing?
I think they just fill it from the bottom of the cavity and work up. And I think if you move the hose at the right rate, the 1-inch wand, that you can do that whole cavity. But
you could do it from the attic.
Somebody who does this work would be way better at answering that.
I didn't know for sure. I've seen it done, in different ways with holes in various places in walls from the interior to the exterior. And even a new construction, I've seen sometimes they put on taller walls, they put the hose in more than one location. So
I want to remind Carol Ann that it's super easy to open up vinyl to do this work from the exterior too. Like, geez, pull off a few courses of vinyl siding and, at least have a look what's going on back there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.